welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. There's all kinds of family. We chose this one. This is episode 370, Hobbs and Shaw, lap 14. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe, too, and this episode is brought to you by David Shaw, LCSW. David Shaw has been provided professional counseling for former members of cultistic groups since 1994. However, he does not provide exit counseling. Shout out to David Shaw, LCSW.
Well, shout out to David Shaw, and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. With us tonight, these guys have kept us waiting for this goddamn train fact for so long, for too long. With us once again, we're winding down the lap, but still got this movie and two more to go. With us once again, Walt, Hickey, and Kim Bhasin. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
It is good to be back.
Winding down there's several film.
I know. Well, it's like, you know, we're in the final, like, 14 episodes that we're recording for the lap. You know what I mean? We're on the tail end, so it's winding down a little bit.
Did you guys see the train tweet that was like, my dad bought a train car, and you'll never guess what he did with it? And it was doing numbers?
It did numbers in our group chat, yes, absolutely.
Plenty of numbers,
Okay.
plenty of numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Joe was like, maybe that's what they're doing train-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, we would like to do numbers on the internet. Kim, do you want to do the train fact, or what do you
I feel like
want to
you've been doing it, you have it ordered in your brain, so you just keep going.
I think I do, and I think I'm going to give a big one away.
Uh-oh.
This is very exciting.
A train car costs $48,000.
Okay.
That's cheaper than I would have thought.
Yup. It's, hey, not going to give you too much more information on it, but I would say that it being vastly cheaper than a fully loaded F-150 was huge news for me.
This is one of these things that you could tell me that like a train car was like $3,000
Yeah.
or like 175, and both answers would have made sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of you read Max by Max
Yeah.
Reed, the Substack, or if you just know about the Pine Bluff story. But do you know about this guy who bought like a bunch of property in Pine Bluff, Arkansas?
No.
I do not.
This guy was like looking for this big warehouse, right? He's just like, I need a lot of space. What's the cheapest? So whatever site he was using, like sorted by like space and square footage or whatever.
Sure.
He found this massive warehouse in a place called Pine Bluff, Arkansas for $375,000. He's like, this has to be a typo. And he went down there, like it's like a normal warehouse, like it's TLC, whatever. And he bought it. He offered like $300,000. And they said yes.
Sure.
And it keeps getting broken into, and like he can't do anything with it. And then instead of like selling it, he just doubled down and bought 75 more properties in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So he's like trying to buy his way through town.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm just thinking like, okay, a train car costs how much? $48,000? Well, what
Yeah.
would it cost to buy our entire train? What would it cost to like buy rights to like ride on a track and just like all of a sudden just keep like, oh, we run a railroad now.
Whoops.
Hey,
Oops.
that is the exact thought process that the previous owner of the train had, and it ruined him financially.
Oh.
So I would recommend do not pursue that angle, as far as we can tell. Like,
Makes sense. Okay.
Well, we still have at least two more train facts, if not three. So maybe one of those will be that you actually do run your own railroad. Who knows?
who knows?
We got all sorts of time. But here we got Hobbs and Shaw. Guys, my most important question right off the bat here, when you're ranking these movies, when you think of this franchise, do you consider this a canonical entry or not? Because the fan base is divided.
Is that this is very interesting to hear, because I think it's canonical. I think it's like interesting, and I think that it's kind of the toe in the water. Like, it is either the blueprint for what the Fast and Furious franchise looks like after the final film, or
Okay.
it is a total anomaly. And like, you know, I'm trying to figure out whether it is the thing that opens up the world and allows them to do the kind of spin-offs that they clearly want to do, whether it's like, you know, young Dom, things like that, or whether it's like clearly there was a lot of personal stuff going on set, and clearly Dwayne Johnson would like to make more movies, but also clearly he doesn't like everybody else involved in the production. And so nevertheless, like, it is interesting, and I think that whether or not it is considered canonical depends on what happens next. Like it could become Rogue One, it could become the Star Wars Holiday Special, depending on how the plan to kind of bloom the rest of the Fast and Furious universe ends up materializing.
It's canonical. Come on, like the spin-off nature of it. Yeah, it's a spin-off, but it's like the Rogue One thing, like a Star Wars story. That's kind of what they're going for here. And what excites me is that if you have room to explore the action, shoot 'em up, punching each other side of the Fast and Furious franchise, like in a specific way like this, could you plausibly do that on the racing side?
Ooh. What would that look like? What are you thinking?
It would look more Tokyo Drifty
Okay.
or the first one, where it's like really focused back on the origins of this thing and street racing. Like that's it seems like, by just acknowledging that this piece of the Fast and Furious universe is worthy of such treatment. Maybe like a smaller budget version of that would be more niche and interesting.
We talked a little bit about this, but like they're just starting production for the Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, which is the anime that's coming out this fall. They're just starting promotion for it, and like I think that like if that movie does well, and I think it will do well because it combines the two biggest, most successful things at the box office right now, which is anime and reboots. Like I think that would be like, it would not shock me if that's a hit. Then fairly soon after, like Fast and Furious is like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a more racing themed, anime kind of style production that is, considered canonical, considered world class. Like clearly, it's a lot easier to get these guys in a booth than it is to get them in the same room together. But like, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if like the spin-offs do start kind of working in different media and like having basically the franchise split to like the Furious part of the franchise being Hobbs and Shaw style movies and the Fast side of it being, something else. That is clever.
In terms of like spin-offs and stuff, I'm not sure how much you guys know about this, but after this movie comes out, it does okay. Like it's not a huge hit, but it makes money. And they're like, we're greenlighting a sequel. They're like two Hobbs, two Shaw, or Hobbs and Shaw 2, whatever, coming. And then COVID. And then basically we have not heard anything either way about that.
It is like, for what it's worth, I know that it underperformed. It is perhaps the worst title for a film that I have ever heard in my entire. It is the most generic. These are men with very generic
given
character
this is
names.
the franchise that we're in.
I do like again. I did not know that his name was Hobbs. He's just The Rock. He plays. He's not a distinctive character. and like even like the show. Like I like before this film came out, I did not really have a huge line in. Like those are the character names, of course. And so like it is remarkable that a film named Hobbs and Shaw made any money. And like it's a miracle.
The Fast and the Furious presents.
The other thing that we have, in terms of spin-offs and stuff, and talking about other medium, we still cannot believe that Peacock has not tried to do a limited series.
Yeah.
Like it just seems like they are sticking to movies, and that's it. There's the Fast and Furious Spy Racers anime or kids show on Netflix that had, Joe, was it 45 seasons?
45 seasons, 6 months. 45 seasons in 6 months, yeah.
But yeah, they've not really dabbled in other mediums, and it feels like, I don't know if it was COVID or just burnout or whatever, but...
I think we told you guys that, though. Like, Spy Racers put out series, like, there was three seasons of it in 12 months. Which is to the point where we were like, how are these people
No.
even
It was 3 seasons in like 7 months. It was like October, December, April or something like that. Like there were 5 seasons over like 3 years, but there were like 3 seasons over 7 months.
And we were like, are they just like recycle? Like, how can they even crank out animation this fast? Like it was unbelievable.
It was like a dime novel. You can crank those out. It takes 2 weeks to write one of those things.
Oh my God. I'm looking at the release pattern. Season 2019, 2 seasons in 2020, 3 seasons in 2021. How the fuck did they do that?
And also, nobody talks about it. Like, considering how popular the franchise is, and considering that it's on Netflix, which is a thing that people,
this is no cultural cachet at all,
talk about things. Zero.
Wow.
The show's not good, but like, there's like it a couple times like hints at maybe dropping lore, and then just like, nah. Like Dom's in 1 or 2 episodes. They're like, oh,
yeah, because it's his nephew. You're following his nephew and his crew. Yeah.
So it's like it's adjacent to lore, but it's not quite lore.
It has like 1 paragraph of production information on it, and it seems like it's just like from the like these were the companies that made this, end of list. And it's like, how on earth was this created? That's incredible.
We need to let him listen to the what's the Yuka song? What was the song, Joey?
Yoka.
Yeah.
There's an energy drink in there.
They made 52 of these fucking things. Wow. Okay. Huh.
I mean, what you could do is you could do what that guy went viral on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or whatever for, where he's like, I set up macros to watch anime at 12 times speed and like, blah, 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 blah. Like you could watch all of these probably in like 1 lunch break. Sure. You could just like go through and be like, yep, I get it. So.
Well, are you mad or impressed that
I'm like, well, I just think that it's weird that like genuinely one of the largest franchises in the world, the signature franchise for Universal Studios, did this and it has no cultural, like, is it a kid thing?
Nothing. It is a kid thing for sure.
Yeah, but like, I mean, part of it's also like you always wonder sometimes it's like, oh, did they come in with a concept for this and then they glommed it onto the Fast and Furious, almost like as an afterthought, like the way that they would like the Die Hard movies. Most of those were separate independent scripts that they made into Die Hard movies in order to get them made, right? Like that's interesting. I'm more fascinated that it doesn't exist. Which, by the way, we are so far afield from Hobbs and Shaw. Like,
Well, okay. Well, I do want to go back to the title. You were saying a terrible name. Watching this, I had an idea for the sequel title, which is even more obscure.
Oh, God.
It would never be the title. But at the end, I'm just like, Brixton, recommissioned.
I love it.
Doesn't have any numbers or
That's-
Fast and the Furious.
that's a 30 Rock movie. That's a movie in the back that Tracy Jordan did as a cash-in. That Brixton.
Yeah.
I watched The Beekeeper last night with Statham, and somebody on Letterboxd I follow said this sounds like the name or the plot of a movie that Adam Scott would make up on a podcast. It's just like, yeah, it's about like these military spies who also keep bees, and they're called beekeepers. It's like, well, okay, but like that's actually what the.
Nope, got it in one actually. Like,
If the Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw, Brixton, the villain from that movie that nobody knows the name of and didn't know that this was a movie, whatever, recommissioned. I don't know, maybe.
is that? I'm sorry. That's the name of Idris Elba's character.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
For a movie that, again, I will say I watched last week, but like these names are not sticky. They like.
How many times have you guys seen this movie? You watched it for this, but theaters, have you watched it in between, like since theaters other than this time?
At most 3 times, probably 2.
Like several plain viewings, maybe like 5 of this
okay.
thing. Yeah.
I will say it's not like it's not bad. I don't think it's a bad film. I think some of the action is like fairly top notch. I would say. I think that some of the stuff at the end in particular is like quite good. I think that the part of it that I don't like, that actually kind of takes me out of it a lot, is that it feels more like a brand activation in some parts of it, like the Kevin Hart stuff, like the Ryan Reynolds stuff. Like a lot of that feels like, oftentimes The Rock gets kind of I think a fair knock for just kind of playing himself on screen. But then when he brings his friends who also just do that, that I think actually really started to take me out of it a little bit in a way that, your mileage probably varies on that. But I did think that, like, the sequence in Russia when they get the thing, all the stuff on Samoa, like there are some really like top notch action set pieces in this thing in a way that I think that some of the action feels more vibrant than some of the stuff that we're going to see in Fast 10 at times. But
You would not watch
did
a
just like
feature film about Air Marshal Dinkley.
I don't think I would sign up for that now. I don't think that Air Marshal Dinkley is the breakout of the film.
Joe and I have signed a contract that if they make an Air Marshal Dinkley, we have to watch that every lap. So, like, if they make a Kevin Hart spin-off movie that's just about Dinkley, it's like, all right, you guys want to be on lap 27 of Dinkley? Okay.
I'll go to Dinkley. If you're gonna do Dinkley, I'll be there.
I will say, we've said this a couple times on here, I don't like watch trailers, but we follow the news of the show, obviously, and somehow, like, Kevin Hart being in this movie surprised both of us. Like, we had no one reported that, no one, like, he might have been on second, but like we're just like, oh, he's friends with The Rock or whatever. Like, that just makes sense. But like,
And Ryan Reynolds wasn't pitched in the movie during
correct.
the promo. He was around set as well, so we were had a hint that he was probably going to be in the movie somewhere, but not to this extent.
I will also say, on the Ryan Reynolds thing, watching this with Deadpool and Wolverine in theaters, the fact that Ryan Reynolds is in here, that Rob Delaney's in here, that the TSA agent who talks about Mike Oxsmall, like that guy, is in the TVA in Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, there's at least 3 guys in this movie, including 2 pretty major, like one, major supporting characters in Deadpool and Wolverine. So, like, I think, Walt, you were saying, like, just bringing friends over or whatever, like, it seems like these guys all just, like, hop from thing to thing, maybe, or, like, maybe they brought in Ryan Reynolds, he's like, oh, I'm friends with Rob Delaney, and, like, they could bring him, whatever, who knows, I don't know, but it was crazy to me, I'm just like, another guy from that movie? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the director did Deadpool 2, right?
Yes, David Leitch.
And, like, I imagine that they know each other from that. Also, like, Ryan Reynolds and The Rock are the 2 guys who are very much, Kim, I know that this is your entire profession, but, like, they're just like, the most, like, brand activation of all Hollywood people. They're, like, basically...
Do you guys have a preference between Terramana Tequila and Aviation Gin?
Not really.
In terms of brand activation? Kim?
Preference? I mean, Aviation sold already to Diageo for a whole ton of money. So,
Oh,
Ryan
really?
cashed
I didn't
out,
know
yeah.
that.
What about Terramana? Is Terramana still a rock joint?
It's still a rock joint. We'll see where that goes because it was one of those brands that all these celebrity tequila brands are really chasing, or tequila and gin and all the liquors. They were chasing both Ryan Reynolds and Casamigos, which is George Clooney. So, but yeah, these two are so active in this, especially Dwayne Johnson, with all sorts of business ventures, right?
He has like a new energy drink out that I just saw.
Zoa.
Yeah, I saw the commercial for it on like Peacock or something, and he was slanging that. I was like, God damn, this is why everybody's mad that you're not running the XFL right now.
And the Army is looking for
The Army's like, that's one of my favorite stories that I've had. Like,
I read your thing from your newsletter verbatim on the last episode. I'm just like, here's news. We just got to read what Walt wrote because like it's more succinct. The Army is upset.
The Army is mad. They're not happy about the situation.
The Army. So we were talking about how, like, you know, it cost them like 38 signups or whatever. Like, he saved 38 lives, and Joe was like, I don't think that's how they think of it.
That's not the Army's math.
You should be paying me. I just saved 38 young men. Do you guys have a pick for the most 80s moment in this movie? Kim, most 80s moment?
I mean, this is just an 80s movie, right?
Okay, the whole thing.
It's Lethal Weapon, Riggs and Murtaugh. It's Dragnet. It's Beverly Hills Cop. Like that's what this. It's like the music. They're so quippy throughout this thing. There's like childhood flashbacks. This is just the whole thing is an 80s movie.
It's very Predator coded, I think, too. He's like Idris Elba is amazing in this movie. Like he's
so good.
Like he is an incredibly talented actor. He's a great bona fide movie star. He looks incredible in this film. I think that he looks phenomenal. He's actually, I think, the most interesting villain of any Fast and Furious villain by far. Like he's actually got something really kind of cool going on. He delivers the line "genocide schmenocide," and in any other actor's mouth that would probably not work. But I don't know. He just nailed it.
He's full of great lines. Like, the first line that he comes in, and they're like, "Who are you?" He's like, "Bad guy, next." Like it's so incredible. Like you don't need to know. We're establishing that this is going to be a stupid action movie off the rip. I'm the bad guy. They're fighting me. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I like my 80s thing is somewhat related to just a more general. Like I was hoping that we could talk a little bit just about Dwayne Johnson, movie star, because I feel like this is going to be our last opportunity to do that for at least this lap. Like I've always been very interested in The Rock. I've written a couple of stories about him over the course of my career. I think he's a super interesting dude in the same way that I think like one of my beliefs is just like, I think the single most interesting American, like, of the 20th century is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think that he understood something about how like movies work, how like people see people. Like he was one of the first guys to kind of realize like if I get big, I'm interesting, and if I'm interesting, people want to look at me, even if I'm like, and like he really kind of locked in on through every phase of his career, you know, positive, negative, that kind of stuff, whether it was the politics, whether it was the films, whether it was the bodybuilding, he like remains like very insatiably interesting in a way that is specifically designed to hit the American middle in a way that stays really fun. And like even in his politics, again, which are center right, but like center right California politician, he is like, nobody's like really mad. Like he doesn't like have the same disdain for Republicans that I think a lot of other people on the left sometimes feel. He doesn't catch any of that because he's like stayed very he just like has definitely navigated an extremely complicated American obsession with image. And I think that Dwayne Johnson is kind of the close, like he very much wants to be Arnold in that way. Like he's flirted with politics in very similar manners. He's like talked, he was big and knew that he was big in an industry that you need to be big, and knew how to command American attention, even the same way that they kind of enter into the film industry is very similar. And so I think that like in this movie, the Schwarzenegger like yearning that Johnson has is very evident. And like I do kind of like, I also don't necessarily think it totally worked for him. I don't think that he's actually like, Arnold is like a generational, interesting, fascinating American story, and like Johnson is a little bit too corporate version of that. It
felt like he was on that trajectory, but like we've been, you know, sort of like loosely covering, not really covering, but talking about for the last like year and a half or two. Like he seemed untouchable, and now it seems like he has not had a win in like 2 years. Like it's wild to see sort of like in real time the downfall of like maybe
Black
the most
Adam.
famous actor.
Yeah,
Black Adam started it. Yep.
And like I also think the main difference is that like Schwarzenegger has always understood that like it's okay to kind of make yourself a joke of it, right? Like he did comedies, he would do things like Twins where he appears to be ridiculous. He did all the 90s,
Yeah.
he did like funny stuff, but like in a way that like allowed his like, persona to be kind of like yeah, I was listening I just went on vacation with my husband, and my husband put on an episode that Schwarzenegger was on of the David Spade and the guy from Wayne's World, Dana Carvey, have like a podcast, and he was on it, and he was talking about like Hans and Franz, the sketch from the 80s. He was like, "Oh no, that was great. You like that put me on the map. People realized that they could poke fun at it. That it was an endearing thing to have an accent, not a humiliating thing." And like he was always down to kind of play with that persona. Whereas The Rock is so fucking self-serious and like really like has that kind of contemporary idea of like you can't really joke about his persona because he is very very earnest about it in a way that I think makes him like his desire to be untouchable makes him less interesting as a performer, you know?
Do you know? Do you remember if Arnold did those movies like early on? Like, at what point did Jingle All the Way come out? And
That was 96.
okay,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he like his 80s were a lot of the big action movies and that kind of stuff. He does but then you also got to remember like he worked with James Cameron when Cameron was a fairly new director, but then he'd continue to work with him on things like True Lies and like actual like films in which he has to act and all that kind of stuff. He would always dabble in the silly stuff, but this is why I'm obsessed with just his persona, which is that he very quickly clocked that the 80s were over, and that if you stayed in the 80s, then you would become like Stallone, like you would become an artifact. You would become just like one of like, you know, Carl Weathers didn't have a ton of work after the 80s because that kind of big guy shoot 'em up wasn't popular anymore. So he quickly in the 90s pivoted towards doing those kind of comedies where he would kind of take some of the like again make fun of his own persona about that kind of stuff. Like he was very quick to kind of realize like, oh, the culture doesn't like guns as much as they used to. They don't like the brazen thing. The Reagan era is over. Time to pivot, and he did it very elegantly in a way that I don't think Dwayne Johnson has been particularly interested in. I think
has
that
anybody seen Tooth Fairy 2?
No.
Because Dwayne is not in it.
Is Statham
Oh.
in
They made a second one, and the Tooth Fairy 2 stars Larry the Cable Guy at.
Oh, right.
Reiki. Well, the Tooth Fairy was a rejected Schwarzenegger script, and like
Then
that's
happened
like
to
literally like a lot of some of like Dwayne's stuff was just like things that were collecting dust because Schwarzenegger said no at some point. Either way, but like I just think that this movie should have been like he has full control of the movie. They go to Samoa, which is clearly a thing that probably Dwayne Johnson pushed for a little bit. Like it was very much like he had a lot of creative control over this to become the action star that he wants to be, and like I don't actually think that he pulls it off in a way that remains compelling.
Kim, what do you think? Where does The Rock go from here? Is it more brand stuff? Is it acting? Is it simplifying? Is it diversifying?
From here right now, or from after Hobbs and Shaw? So
No, from here, because we know after Hobbs and Shaw, he takes loss after loss after loss. Like he goes to Black Adam from here, and that, oh boy. But I mean, like from here in 2024, if you're his brand manager, you're like Dwayne.
You're sitting in an ocean of money, Scrooge McDucking, swimming around. You're Dwayne Johnson's brand manager. What do you say?
right there he is in his cave full of money. So I think we've already started to see it, and it happened earlier this year when The Rock returned to wrestling. I think bringing him back into that world and having him around everything, he was the hottest thing in wrestling this year. He was probably the hottest thing in wrestling over the past several years, along with his cousin Roman Reigns. But like this year, he headlined night 1 of WrestleMania. He appeared at night 2 of WrestleMania. He was on every single week for months ahead of it. Like bringing him back into the wrestling world gave him like, and he was a bad guy too. He wasn't taking himself too seriously for a second, because when he reverts to like The Rock, which is not Dwayne Johnson, when he reverts to that character, it feels like more he's looser with it, right? Where the rest of his image has to be so, I'm Dwayne Johnson, I'm like the nice guy, I'm friends with everybody, I remember everyone's names. If Jack Black makes fun of me, I'm gonna laugh, ha ha ha. Like you get that version of The Rock, but like when he's The Rock and he's being a dick to everyone around him, you're like, oh yeah, I like watching this. This is amazing.
So return to basics, maybe scarcity and other things, just like focus on the wrestling, focus on him being a heel, and then people are going to want him back.
Do you guys know about the Smashing Machine? Not to jump in here.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for that.
So it's a Benny Safdie of the Safdie brothers is directing an A24 movie called The Smashing Machine, which is about a guy, I think his name's Kerr, but basically he was like one of the first UFC guys, and it was like in the earliest days of UFC, and he was just like very, very good at UFC because he would knee people in the face and shit like that. Got very into drugs and mostly like opiates and that kind of thing, and then kicked the habit. But like, it's a serious part. He looks like like they put a fake schnoz on him for at least the video that or the still that they released, and it looks like the Safdie brothers are very good at taking people out of their comfort zone. Like obviously Adam Sandler was doing shit in Uncut Gems that he had never done on film before. They're very good with like new and kind of amateur actors, right? Like they do take people who are just kind of doing brand new stuff. So like I think that could potentially like do wonders for him. Like I don't know if it's like it's being released at the time that you release Oscar Plays, and it would not surprise me if at least he's kind of put a little energy behind that. I would be surprised. I mean, it obviously depends on the film, but like I don't know if it's entirely just that. But like if he is able to get positive reviews by pushing himself in a new direction and actually taking direction and not just hiring one of his best friends to direct a movie where he plays a version of himself, like I think that could really that could seriously reboot a lot of his actual film work.
Could be good. It's like the Tarantino effect, but for like the modern day.
Yeah.
It's like the Robert Pattinson off Twilight. What can you do off The Rover, which is also great. Like, oh, you can do Good Time? Okay, cool. Or like Uncut Gems. And now Josh Safdie's like, I'm just going to direct a comedy special. While Benny Safdie's like making like generation-defining art with Nathan Fielder. He's like, I'm going to go do an Adam Sandler Netflix special and probably make a couple $1 million. Joe, what's your pick for the most 80s moment?
As I was watching it this time, I think that a very 80s thing is all the classic rock references. Like you have The Rock wearing a Motley Crue t-shirt, you have them doing all the special fun time pranks like the Keith Moon, stuff like that. But I ultimately think the diner that they're in with Ryan Reynolds is pretty 80s, but I think the most 80s thing about this movie is the disguises that they wear to the airport. Like the goofy mustache, like that kind of shit is just like so apparently them and like so corny costumey that I think that was my most 80s moment of this movie.
Pretty good.
Oxmole.
Thank you, sir.
I went with, I think sort of similar maybe to Kim's. I just went with the concept of cybernetics. Felt kind of 80s, just like computers. We don't really understand them, but they're bad. Or are they? We'll explore. Yeah. And the other thing is a very, very brief thing, but it opens with Hobbs in like what looks like a Gold's Gym style gym. Like that feels.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
80s.
Yeah. Now that we talked about Arnold, that just feels like Arnold shit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's super deliberate. I think that it is just interesting to see where Johnson's career is having a conversation with Schwarzenegger's career in a way that succeeds or fails. Like again, like he like they both did sword and sandal shit. They like rocked at Hercules. Like Conan was like you can, if you look at just like what they've done, you can see a lot of these kind of peered films, right? Like even I don't know. It's super interesting because it's more interesting when it doesn't work than when it does work. But when it does work, it is actually very good. But yeah, this movie was interesting to me because it did feel like, man, the guy's at the height of his powers. He has full control of this movie for all intents and purposes, and like he's just not doing that much interesting here.
He name drops Terminator in this movie too.
Yeah, I mean I imagine that. Trying to live up to the cultural cachet of literally one of the most interesting Americans ever is potentially weighing on him. And again, he was also like late career Schwarzenegger went hard into comedy because it wasn't as viable to maintain the form as it was when he was younger. And I think Johnson is also kind of at the age where knees are kind of shot. Like there's a lot the body keeps the score, and I don't know, it is kind of fun. I will say we haven't talked very much about him, but Jason Statham is honestly just a breath of fresh air and a delight in these films. I've decided.
Yeah. I think that he was on a similar sort of trajectory as a lot of these muscle guys, like Vin Diesel, like The Rock, whatever. And then he's like, well, what if I did like comedy, but not like kids comedy? Like, what if I was just like in Paul Feig's Spy or something? Like, you're just like, oh no, like you're actually. I think part of it is that like you don't expect comedy out of someone who looks like him, but also he's pretty good at it. There's something about it where it's like, oh no, this is actually refreshing. I think the supporting cast in this, between, or not even supporting cast, but like around The Rock, because we talked a lot about The Rock, but like Statham, Vanessa Kirby as Hattie, like there's a lot of things in here. Madam, Isa Gonzalez as Madam M in her one scene. Like there's a lot of here to really like. It's just there is The Rock.
I think Rob Delaney's very good in this. Like Ryan Reynolds takes me out of it. Delaney nails exactly who it should be.
Yeah. Kim, what do you think of Statham? We haven't talked much about Statham.
Statham, I mean, he's playing what Jason Statham plays, right? It's just his
he is,
his job
100%.
is different in this one. He's not a beekeeper. He's not a transporter. He is. But yeah, no, that's what he is so incredibly good at. Like he can do it on his own or with someone else, and not all these action stars are capable of doing the buddy cop thing at the level that Statham does it. And like the action scenes too, the way he sounds, like you talked about Idris before, and how good he was in this. He like sounds proper nefarious in this one throughout the whole thing. Statham, no matter, he just feels dangerous, you know?
Sure.
At all times, even though he's with the largest human on the planet right next to him, he feels like a weapon, and he does such a good job getting that across.
I think there's also something about maybe just the actor or what we have built up, like mythologized around them, but like his one sort of romantic scene where he just makes out with Madam M feels organic, but then they try to force in the Hattie Hobbs thing, which doesn't quite work, but it's like, well, there needs to be some kind of romance, and it can't be brother and sister, so it's got to be the other guy and the girl.
Okay. Dwayne Johnson he's not good at movie romance. He doesn't have a lot of chemistry with us. I don't know why. I think that he's very interested. Like he's very, very good at like being striking and interesting and kind of cutting a good figure and that kind of stuff. But like Jason Statham has chemistry with everyone. He genuinely seems like he's very charismatic in a way that is, I think, very understated. But like he just has a lot of chemistry. And like I think that Statham's putting in a little bit more work when it comes to making the Hobbs and Shaw dynamic work. Whereas I just think that, again, like Dwayne Johnson, like I was trying to, has he had like a very good on-screen romance? And the answer is like, kind of no.
Is it like an authenticity thing?
I don't know. I think it's
in terms of like believing what you're seeing on screen.
He was a wrestler, dude.
The point of wrestling is that you have people suspend their disbelief because it's not real.
Fair.
It's real for you right then, And like what Dwayne is good at is that the Statham back and forth parts of this movie where it's not just Dwayne talking to the bad guy or whatever. It's Dwayne and his buddy, and they deliver what is a wrestling promo. This is not even my wrestling moment of the movie.
God damn it!
But back and forth, those scenes where they go back and forth insulting each other, that's pro wrestling. That's why his delivery is so good in those scenes.
If we were in a different universe where gay people ran wrestling, I could imagine wrestlers kissing sometimes. Whereas in this, I do not see any like The Rock. It does not have any like that kind of chemistry with anyone in any film ever, and I don't know entirely why. In a way that like I don't think it's bad, and I think that most of the times they're able to kind of work around it. But like I don't think he's had a believable on-screen relationship. But I am curious, Kim, what your wrestling moment of the week is to carry forward the thing that I have interrupted.
Wrestling moment of the week is the concept of a foreign object. Would anyone like to give that a stab? What's the foreign object, guys?
Chairs, ladders, chairs.
Yes, a foreign object is something that you use from the environment to
from beyond the ring,
your enemy with, or poke. Could be piercing damage to the eye should you wish. But I made a list of foreign objects that are used in this film, and this is probably among the most foreign objecty movies ever created. It's just.
Really?
Aside from like kung fu movies, it's probably this. It's okay, here we go. Ready? Champagne bottle, metal sheet, tattoo gun, rope, motorcycle helmet, bag of trash, paint bucket, car battery, glass vase, glass bottle, toaster, shower head, folding chair, arm from a folding chair, metal chair, artillery shell, bolt cutters, helicopter missile pod, helicopter window, scrap metal club, small wrench, sledgehammer, and then the dozens of bludgeoning weapons from the closet in Samoa.
Wow.
And then there's also a stun gun, which is like a weapon. It's not really improvised, but it is kind of a legendary wrestling weapon as well, because that's how Bill Goldberg's streak was lost at Starrcade in 1998. Oh. Stun gunned and finally lost his title and streak.
Doesn't seem fair.
I don't think the ref saw it. The ref didn't see it.
No, it was a no DQ match, so it didn't matter. The unfortunate thing is there are two weapons that are never used that you would love to see used. One is when The Rock enters that room with the giant man who comes out from under the vehicle with a huge wrench, and he never uses the huge wrench. And then his mom and the chunkla that she's gonna throw.
Oh yeah, but the big wrench that's a Dom Toretto move. He can't use the big wrench. That's Dom Toretto's for an object. Yeah,
signature weapon.
Yeah.
Walt, what is your most D&D moment of the movie?
It's interesting because again, like I feel like my conceit with the D&D moments is that it is Vin Diesel's perspective. It is the way, if you look at what he's liked in the past, what kind of stories he's drawn to, his vision as author, whatever you have, is like drawn towards D&D moments. And this film, I think that based on what I understand about its production and how it was made, was not really steered by Vin in the way that I would argue that a lot of the mainline Fast and Furious films were. So I do think that it is a little bit of a lighter touch in this one, and it's less like deliberately evoking the kind of elements of D&D. But I would say in this one, I think it's got to be like the incredibly convenient backstories. It's just like, oh yeah, we'll go to the best mechanic in the world, who's also my brother, who I've never mentioned until this point. But we need somebody to fix the thing. And yeah, DM, of course I have a brother. Of course he's the best mechanic in the world. He's also all my cousins are there, so they can help fight too. That's fine too, right? And then. And this, and like the sister thing too, was also an incredibly, invented contrivance, right? Like, oh yes, of course we need to save, the sister that I never mentioned, who my brother was also in these movies, and he never mentioned me. I know, so it's probably running in the family. But yeah, of course I have a sister who is also Helen Mirren's kid, yeah. So I don't know. I think this was the ass pull of like, oh yeah, no, of course. Listen, I know that we don't have a healer on our team, but my brother's in the next town over, and he's a healer, and so we can. Yeah,
I think that these are very well taken points. I will also say though that these are relatively new to us characters, as opposed to in the next movie where the beating heart of the franchise is like, oh yeah, my brother.
Yep.
Did I not mention a brother?
Yep. They pull the trick later, and for that film, I think there's another thing in there, but like the classic, like, oh yeah, no backstory that makes the actual because if he was not the brother of the best mechanic in the world, which is kind of rude that it's not Dom, I will say, but like if he's the brother of the best mechanic in the world, that information could have come up before now. And I will say, like, I go back and forth on the Samoa stuff a little bit, just because it does feel slightly contrived. It does feel like a producer note. The producer note in general came from probably Dwayne, but like there is his mom does have a very funny line being like, "Oh, look at you, all skin and bones," and I was like, that's a really funny thing to say about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yeah. So I don't know. It doesn't super work for me, but it also doesn't not work for me. But that is my D&D moment, as best I could, scrape together from a movie that actually is not made with that vision in mind. It definitely has a little bit more of a Campbellian kind of arc.
Is it a one shot?
I mean, listen, it certainly looks like it's a one shot. Yeah. The other thing is, like, yeah, sometimes D&D groups, like, you get a smaller subgroup of them who are like, I want to try a thing in Blades in the Dark, and so they'll have a separate sub game, and that's kind of what this is. But yeah, it's definitely the least D&D, or the lightest touch D&D, at least for quite some time.
How do we feel about the erasure of Owen Shaw in this movie?
Yeah, what happened? Is he dead? I think I missed that. He's not dead.
No,
because he was on the plane in Fate helping the baby.
He was on the plane in Fate. You're right. That was weird to me. I did not necessarily. I also
because they do all the flashbacks and don't they could have easily put another kid in these flashbacks and it would have been like, oh
yeah, that
was Owen. He's not here. They're not talking about him. But like we see a third kid in the flashbacks, they acknowledge him. But no, they don't even. They have Hattie and Jason Statham in the flashbacks, and no third brother. And
so
they're all
like
to 10.
When Joe and I saw this movie for the first 3 or 4 times, like over the course, like when it was still in theaters, we're like, I don't even think he's mentioned. And like one listener was like, actually, like Queenie one time says Owen, like your brother, and it's just like, but that's like it's a throwaway line, just like we know that there's another one.
Yeah. It
Very
is
strange.
very peculiar. And also, again, my understanding of Dwayne Johnson's arc was like literally the last scene of the previous film is him rejecting a position back with DSS, or like he was basically given his badge and gun back, and then he looks at his daughter and he's like, "I'm retired now." And so I was wondering, I didn't think that he still had a job, and so like I was kind of curious as to like, yeah, DSS loaned you, and I was like, they can't do that. He's done. Like,
I want to go back just very like a thought that I had, or a question that I had, sort of ties into Walt your D&D thing, but I was wondering, like, not only do we go to Samoa in this, we also go to Deckard's like fully decked out garage where he's got like all these cars and this booze and all these computers and like all the, you know, the gear or whatever. And I was wondering how many more garages we might have left in us in this franchise. Like, same way you're saying, like, oh, my brother's a healer in the next town over. Just like, oh no, I know a place where we can get literally
70 cars. Yeah.
Not that there's an answer to that, but I'm just wondering, like, oh yeah, like there's just, of course, like I had a life before you knew me, basically, right? It's just like, oh, we got it.
I know that they're like thieves and spies, but like that's a lot of maintenance to do. Like that, like you, like how many like garages full of 10 supercars can you possibly maintain on a criminal salary?
Don't know.
I mean, when we were doing that data project, we separated garage time and hideout time to see how often they were in like a place where one fixes cars versus a place where you plan crime or plan something, whatever it is, a military planning facility, like whatever it is. So garage versus hideout. And in the first movie, it's all garage time. In the second one, it's nearly all garage time. Third one, all garage time. Fourth one, all garage time. And then in 5, it's all hideout. And ever since then, we're getting more hideout time than garage time. We didn't do the numbers for Hobbs and Shaw, but like Fate had not a single regular car garage in it.
It's just like there is a hideout with garage stuff in it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like this is a hideout.
This is a hideout.
This one, but there's cars and ostensibly wrenches somewhere.
An issue that this franchise has, which because it went from being a like we're going to do a crime in a city, we're going to race some cars in a city. Now that it has become an international experience, moving a car between different countries is one of the most annoying possible. Like the one logistical hurdle that they have now opted into by doing 10 different cities in every single film was like how did they rent a car in Russia? That's I mean, they didn't. They jumped out of a plane, I guess, but like it's just the logistical bounds of what car is good at is not well served by the internationalization of the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Well, this movie is just like, oh, we have Dinkley. Like he just did it.
Yeah.
Right?
The power of Dinkley, man.
I think the real answer is like, Walt, have you ever experienced what it's like for people that have one car in the hood? Like that's everyone's car.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what it is. It's more like they show up and it's like, yeah, let's call Steve. Steve was in Russia. Like, let's borrow his car. It just happens that they know everybody that has supercars. You know what I mean? But they're like, yeah, you could take the keys, bring it back next week, whatever. Don't worry about it.
None of these, as much as all of these actors are like, yeah, I'm 40. It's like, none of you are 40. Like, they've all been doing this for decades, right? And I think this movie does establish, like, oh, I know a woman, like, I know Madam M. I can just go to Magdalena, right? Like, there are people that they just have pockets of. Like, they just know enough people from a job at one point so they can just be like, oh yeah, Steve's car.
So they're not shipping the cars back and forth because I agree that's a logistical nightmare. Yeah.
I mean, early on they would win the cars, right? If we need a second car,
yes,
gotta win it.
Yeah, we take the one that we borrowed, and then we go win a second one. Then that's ours, and then we wreck them all.
Right. And then there's no.
And that's how this works. Then there's no cars left.
It's amazing that people still race these guys. Just like, you're not going to win. You're going to lose your car. Stop racing them.
What's his name? Wait, fan favorite Diogo says,
Diogo.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
fan favorite Diogo says, like, a Toretto car in my collection.
Man, I miss Diogo. I'm so glad we're almost back to fan favorite Diogo.
We told you guys about this?
No, please expand.
Diogo is like if you're ranking like characters in Fast 5 by like order of memorability, he's probably about 40th.
Uh-huh.
But he comes back in Fast 10. He's the guy who dies in Fast 10. Like, they're racing, and like Dom has the kind of like Dark Knight, like, do you
Has
save
to
him
save
or her?
her. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so he lets Diogo die. But like
Oh,
in
right.
Diogo's like IMDb bio, just like
We Google-
fan
yeah, we searched
favorite Diogo returns to the Fast, and we're just like, who?
Yeah.
So Not to burn that guy, but like it's just like
It's a trope I get really like annoyed with in movies like this, where you challenge the person who you're obviously going to lose to. Like, watch The Witcher. People keep fucking with The Witcher, and it's like, he's gonna kill you. What are you doing? This is so stupid.
Well, I do think, on the other hand, in this movie, we have two guys who are 100% muscle, and yet they will lose to one guy who is 100% muscle, or 50% muscle, 50% machine, because they don't know how to work together. What do you guys think of the moral of this movie being teamwork's important?
Is that the moral of this? Is that the moral of this movie?
That's ultimately what it comes down to.
But it's the only lesson learned in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple morals in this movie. I think that one of them is hey, don't get a Neuralink just so that you can know somebody who's obviously about to punch you is 94% chance of punching.
Brother, you may believe in machines, but we believe in people. It's well, yeah, but AI or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't does the Fast and I mean, we are far enough in that I'm sure that if there is one, it is discernible. What is the moral of the Fast and Furious saga?
That family is what you make of it. I think that's what the moral is. Found family in general, that your friends can be family, and it's all about who you care about. I think that's the ultimate moral of Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, but then why are all the villains about AI now?
Because that's what every movie's about now.
I know, but it's just if that's then maybe it's like the best villains were the ones who were oh, I'm going to try to break up the family. Like Charlize.
Yes.
I mean, that's the most effective.
Because that's the main moral. Yeah.
But now why is it why does Mr. Nobody exist?
Does he exist? We don't know.
He's basically gone.
They give that one promo video that he cuts in the plane, and then he's gone, and then we don't talk about him in the next one, right?
There's a line that one of the guys delivers at ETN that's just, we hacked all the newspapers and whatever, all the media in the world.
Sure. Yeah.
How does that feel? How does that feel, Kim?
We hacked all the media in the world. Okay, that's okay. Great. Next line.
It's not hard. All the media is basically everyone has just a subscription to every newspaper, and there's just the list in the office in Microsoft Excel that's just here's all the passwords. It's not hard to hack the whole media.
I always like that. It reminds me of when people are they have a cure for whatever disease, and I'm if you knew how science worked, you'd know that that's not true. It's just Kim hearing they hacked the media, all of it. You're just yeah, okay, sure,
why not?
Yeah.
But they could just kill Hattie and they'll just take care of the disease problem altogether, right? Just
yeah, set her on fire. That's what they said.
Purely, I'm sure her body is not going to still harbor those germs and somehow get out or spread the contagion or whatever. But just kill her. Did you guys stick around through the 3 or 4 credit scenes?
Oh yeah,
I think I stuck around through 2 of them. I guess I'd missed. Is there?
There's one where Ryan Reynolds calls.
Yes, that's a good one.
Hobbs.
I thought that was fun.
After he somehow beats up an entire hallway of guys, he's I am the virus. Just kidding, I'm not the virus. There's also one where, at the very end, where Hobbs gets back at Shaw by calling basically by swatting him and having them call him Hugh Janus.
Okay, yeah.
At the
bar. Did not have an opportunity to take it in that
Janus. And then there's the final one with the brick, which is just
more Game of Thrones.
An extension of the first one.
Yeah.
I don't think that needed 3.
What do you guys think of all the Game of Thrones in here? Does that still feel timely?
Nope, not at all. It does not.
There's a lot of Game of Thrones in here.
There's more Game of Thrones than I think that, because it was 2019, and I felt Game of Thrones wasn't even, particularly fresh then either.
Nope. It was not. But didn't this movie get pushed back a year, Joey?
It might have, but still, even then,
it was on the tail end of it, as they're shooting it, and then it got pushed back a year, I think, or something, and then it was oh, this just feels wildly
I've
dated.
mentioned this before when we've talked about this, but there's still a joke that works in Logan Lucky that it shouldn't. Where
oh my god, it's so good.
Logan Lucky, where they're talking, there's the prisoners demanding compensation. And the prison warden gets back to them just look, we can get you all this stuff, but we can't get you books 6 and 7 and Song Ice and Fire because he hasn't written them yet. They're we've been in here for years. He was on book 5. How has he not written books? It just but that
yeah, that's a good joke. Yeah,
works. This just saying nothing, Jon Snow.
It has been longer since that movie was released than the time between when A Dance with Dragons and that movie was released. So it has been twice as long. when the joke was making oh yeah, it's taken a long time, he's got delayed. It's like it has been longer than the time originally elapsed since that has occurred. I guess my main question is, like, with all the Game of Thrones jokes, is who do they think plays Miss Andai in their version of Game of Thrones?
And Momoa's in them too, bud.
Fuck, Momoa is in them. Momoa
Yeah.
is the biggest pop of any Game of Thrones actor by far.
That's what I mean. And he's in. So they have Melisandre and him in the movies now.
Shit.
How did they
Not
reconcile it?
Missandei.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I forget all their names. Sorry.
Also, Charlize's henchman in Fate of the Furious
It's the mountain.
is also
right?
no.
He's the red-haired.
red-haired guy.
Yeah.
He's also in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, why are they being so mean to those? Anyway, if they're your colleagues, at least be kind to them about it. But
there's also the thing where in this, I know it's just like a throwaway joke, it's not really canon, but like Deckard references that he is Handsome Rob from the Italian Job. He's like, oh, that was from a job I did in Italy. Wink, wink.
Okay, that's kind of funny.
So we've now adopted Italian Job, Handsome Rob as canon for like the
because that movie
origin story
also
of Deckard
has
Shaw.
Charlize
Also
Theron
has
in it,
Charlize in it. Yeah.
but not as Cypher, as a woman who has no agency that Mark Wahlberg walks in on while she's changing and doesn't leave.
Well, it was the
That's
2000s. I don't know what to tell you.
Do you have any other thoughts, any other notes about this movie?
Every time we go to start this movie, I don't know what it is about it, but I get so excited. I think that this movie is, I really do. I think that this movie is a ton of fun. And I think that Kim was talking about separating like the fast from the furious parts of this. And I think that because it is semi outside of the Fast and Furious world, it doesn't take itself as seriously or is as brooding as the later Fast and the Furious movies. And I think it benefits greatly from that fact that like it just is fun, it's silly, it's tongue in cheek. And also I am ready to propose to you guys that second only to Tokyo Drift, this movie might have the best soundtrack of any Fast and the Furious film. It should not go this hard.
There are so many needle drops in this movie that almost feels like it's too much.
But they're good. The songs are good. Like, I like the songs in this movie so much more than, like, any... Since 7? Since we had See You Again? Like, what was the last one that's, like, as memorable as this for me? And I don't watch this movie that often.
We talked about this a couple episodes ago, but, like, there's no like music to these movies. Like if I say like hum the Fast and Furious theme, like it does not exist. Like they are very anonymous. They're entirely needle drop based on that kind of front. And like I do think that this one, like again, like I would argue that probably Vin has some pretty considerable say over what gets optioned for those kind of the mainline films. A little bit of a fresh year on these. It really did feel different. It felt like kind of again it really didn't feel very. Like of Fast and Furious, right? It felt really kind of.
It didn't feel as corporate to me. It's like they found songs that kind of like fit what they were going for, or like newer and stuff like that, and it wasn't like as manufactured.
Yeah.
For the movie, although Idris did do 2 songs on the soundtrack.
Hell yeah, we love that
whatever.
for him. He's a multi-hyphenate, incredibly talented. More good things for Idris Elba. I'm mad that they killed him. I genuinely am unhappy about it.
But every time I watch this movie, I go back and listen to the soundtrack again because I think it doesn't even need to be as good as it is. So, and yeah, still watching it now, even after we watch it a bunch of times. When I watch this, like when I put this one on, I'm like, this is just a fun action movie, and it hits for me. So I haven't gotten disenchanted with this movie yet.
Kim, other thoughts, final thoughts, Hobbs and Shaw?
There are parts of this that felt kind of John Wicky to me, which is like when you meet characters in this universe just real briefly, and they're super interesting characters as part of
Madam M.
Yeah, as part of this world, like her. It's exactly what I'm talking about when they arrive at that mansion, like, and Kevin Hart on the plane, like those kinds of things that they pepper through this movie. I think it was really cool. It makes you feel like you're in whatever, like, the society that they roll in, and that's what the older Fast and Furious movies had more of. I think the random street racers that you meet for a few minutes and then they disappear. This time they're just people who steal from Russian mobsters.
Walt, final thoughts?
It feels like a departure from the franchise in a good way. I think a lot of its legacy will be determined by what actually Fast and Furious does. Like if they continue to try to percolate these kind of things out, I think it'll be remembered as like a successful tonal experiment that kind of opened up a lot of doors. If none of that materializes, then I mean, like that's like sometimes that just doesn't kind of happen. Like that might not like this movie might be kind of an afterthought. I think that the John Wick of it, Kim, is like clever in no small part because again the director was very involved with making John Wick, right? Like I think that this movie, like like David Leitch is like an interesting filmmaker. I think at this point, again, like Deadpool 2 did interesting things with that character and was very very successful. I think like The Fall Guy was very very good this year. I think that he's actually got an aesthetic that takes the Fast and Furious movies in a very different direction that I don't kind of hate a lot of it. And like, there's parts of it that I can kind of quibble with it. A lot of it is with the Dwayne Johnson of it all. But like, this movie was much more watchable than I think I remembered it being. I think I was more down on it in memory than I am actually when I'm watching it, in which case it is a very fun, silly romp.
No, I think it's very fun and watchable. Like, my only frustration with this is that, like, if we never get another one, it feels less important.
Yeah.
Or if they continue to just ignore the fact that this, like, that they have not mentioned E.T. on the core franchise, that just, like, the farther we get from this, without ever, like, acknowledging this exists, without bringing Hattie into the franchise, it's just like, all right, well, like, okay. My only other thought, and I watch these now with subtitles just to see if I can pick up anything new. When Hobbs picks up Hattie when they're fighting in the street, it just subtitles her as brackets growls, which I thought was pretty good. Just growling. All right, we're going to go to This Ain't No 10-Second Race, a.k.a. Boy Do We Have a Podcast for You.
Boy, do we have a podcast for you. Come and check out our show. Yeah, yeah.
This is where we go on Twitter.com. Oh, sorry, X.com, the Everything app.
It's
now powered by Grok.
Oh, they changed it finally?
Well, you can go to Twitter.com and
redirects.
redirects, but yeah, it's been X.com for a while now.
Okay.
We're going to X.com, the Everything app powered by Grok, and we are going to find any tweet from anybody about these movies, the actors, the franchise, whatever, and respond to them as Too Fast, Too Forever. Follow us there. Last time, when we talked about Fate of the Furious, I found Jen and the Ginger, who said, I'm watching the Fate of the Furious, and somehow I'm having a better time than everyone watching the debate, which, that was so long ago, with the debate no longer even relevant.
Nope.
We quote tweeted, watching these movies instead of literally anything else is always a good idea. Boy, do we have a podcast for you. It got 3 likes. The 3 likes were from Randy, Aaron, and Matthew Anderson, all of whom follow us, so 0 points for me, unfortunately. Joe, you found Mini-Me at Mini-Me. Not sure anyone puts any thought into this aside from me, but I gotta get off my chest that I don't understand how the Fate of the Furious is generally higher rated than F9 by critics and fans. F8 was exhausting and carelessly messed up the lore by making Statham good, I tell you. And we said, same here. We were big fans of F9 and highly critical of F8 for the longest time, and we talked about this plenty. Boy, do we have a podcast for you. It got 1 like, and that like is from Randy Carter. Unfortunately, Joe, no points.
No points.
Walt, you found file number 0000001 at Trace Leche off 22. Hand over mouth emoji, hand over mouth emoji, hand over mouth emoji, hand over mouth emoji. No way Fate of the Furious hit Prime so soon after we mentioned it. Thank you, Glob, for this power that I will continue to use only for stupid or trivial gain. And we said we urge you to use this power responsibly by asking for Fast 11 to happen anytime ever. And you should check us out. We love this stuff too. Boy, do we have a podcast for you. Got 1 like, also from Randy. Unfortunately, none. And then, Kim, you found Cunty Cancer at Adore Lay. Fuck all that other shit. You about to watch this whole Fast and Furious saga with me. And we said, fuck yeah, we will. Boy, do we have a podcast for you. Got 1 like. That like was also from Randy Carter, so unfortunately, no points all around. But thank you for the love, Randy. All right. Kim, you were the first one to send me your tweet. Please hit us with your tweet and how you would like us to respond.
All right. So this is a quote tweet for a post that just says, first logo for The Mandalorian and Grogu in theaters, May 2026. And that's Laddie responded, Hot Fuzz, Cop Out, Hobbs and Shaw, Two Guns, The Other Guys, Let's Be Cops, The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Little Hobbs and Shaw reference in there, too.
Little Hobbs and Shaw.
I mean, this also goes to your thing about this is just an 80s movie. This is just like a buddy cop duo. How do you want to respond to That's Lottie?
This is a long response, but I believe it. Ready? All right. Too hot, too fuzz. Two cop, two out. Two Hobbs, two Shaw. Two guns. Two other two guys. Two lets, two cops. And two Mandalorian, two Grogu.
Wait, two lets to be two cops, or two lets be two cops?
Let's
or
do all
just two lets, two cops.
Two lets to be two cops. There we go.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's important.
It's an excellent response tweet. You should get somebody should enjoy that.
Hopefully someone at least enjoys the two guns.
Two Mandalorian, two Grogu. Pretty good.
Hey,
pretty,
that one cracks.
Pretty good. All right, Walt, please hit us with yours.
Mine is also a quote treat. The original tweet is, someone recommend a good rom-com so I can rub my feet together under the blanket and giggle. And the quote tweet is Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw. So, yeah, our favorite
beautiful.
rom-com. Yeah. And I was like, hey, I think that we should just respond to that in the conventional way, which is just like, hey, that's also our favorite rom-com too. And if you would like more of, then we do the thing. So,
yeah. I think we found some bangers of tweets, by the way.
Hey,
okay.
It is like, again, I think that the lowest one was, I think, Tokyo Drift, because that had a lot of randos in it. But I think that people, these later films are on a lot of people's radar, and I think they are beloved in many ways.
Joe, hit us with yours.
Mine's from Yuvaraj at Yuva_404. It's quote tweeting. Guy Lucho asks, "What is your favorite action film of all times?" His list is Hobbs and Shaw, John Wick 3, Mad Max Fury Road, and Mission Impossible 7.
Hell yeah.
And I just want to say, Hobbs and Shaw on top where it deserves to be. Boy, do we have a podcast for you. If somebody was like, what's your favorite action film of all time? I don't think that I would come out with Hobbs and Shaw off the riff.
Honestly, if this guy said Fast 5, John Wick 1, Fury Road, Mission Impossible Fallout, I'd be like, these are like the 4 best action movies. Like, it's quoting the Raid, too, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, so it's, but those would be 4. But like, he's so close on 2.
I know.
Also,
I know.
Just objectively wrong.
But Hobbs and Shaw on top, sure, yeah.
I found this tweet a while ago. I did not. We're basically hitting the same thing 3 times, where it's just somebody quote tweeting and doing a list.
Okay.
So this is also from 4 years ago. So on May 4th, 2020, so right in the heart of COVID.
Beautiful.
At Collider Frosty.
Awesome time mentally for everyone.
Steven Weintraub was like, well, yeah, May 4th is just like people being like,
oh, that's when
maybe this isn't going to stop.
Yeah, that's when people realize, like, oh no, it's not going to blow over. Like, 30 days.
Steven Weintraub at Collider Frosty said, anyone want to take a guess? At Universal Picks has announced the following release dates for untitled Universal event films. And they're Fridays in January 2020, or Fridays in 2022, in January, February, June, July, and November, right? So a lot of people are just like, here's what I'm guessing, whatever, right? Randy Thomas Jr. at X Ender Wigan X guessed Fast 10 Your Seatbelts, parentheses, entirely in cars, 2 Hobbs, 2 Shaw, parentheses, Brixton, Joy, and Seam, Furious 11-7, parentheses, time travel back to Furious 7,
okay.
Hobbs and Shaw 24 Hours of Le Mans, parentheses, E.T. on Leader revealed as Satan, and then, the
beautiful
ghost face emoji, Fast and Furious 12, Hell's Bells, parentheses, Hobbs and Shaw back with team to defeat Etion in Hell. And I'm going to say to Randy Thomas, it's sad none of this actually happened. Let's get you in a Furious 11-7 to go back in time and make sure it does. Boy, do we have a podcast for you.
Perfect.
Good stuff, guys. This is a.
I said we were on a good run. I could feel it. It was brewing. Yeah. You guys hit some good ones. I think that everybody did a good job.
Yeah. It's hard to get some of the tweets sometimes, but that was a good setup.
I'm always just like, whenever each of you sends the tweet, I'm like, please, just not the one that I found.
I've done
like,
so many.
Mine was also 6 hours ago, so I was
mine
very
from 4.5 years ago. I was just like,
yeah,
I'm good. But thank you so much, guys, for joining us once again. We'll be back next week with F9. But until then, what do you want people to find you, read about, post about, whatever? Well, your book keeps going on sale. Like, it keeps, like I said, a price threshold on Camel. Your book keeps like dipping below $20.
Not bad.
So I get alerted every time. I'm just like, there you go. So it's on sale. If you've not bought yet, You Are What You Watch.
Rock on.
Go buy it. But what do you want? What have you done since the last time we chatted? What do you want people to find about you? Sherwood News, Nummuck News? Go for it.
Yeah, those are both fun. Yeah, if you go to sherwood.news, that's the website that I run. And then numlock.com is the newsletter that folks can definitely check out. And yeah, those are pretty much the most reliable ways to get a hold of me. Definitely, it's kind of a quiet summer, and I'm kind of looking forward to the fall where things start to pick up a little bit. But yeah, no, pretty fine on my end.
Kim, what about you?
I have a story out from a little bit ago about how Nike is betting on Olympic spending to revive its sales. Nike too hot right now. There's been layoffs. Sales are down. They're going to be down for the next year, and they spent a whole ton of money on the Summer Olympics over in Paris. It looks like, I mean, they had plenty of athletes win and got some hype there, but there's not a whole lot of new products out right now, so. We'll see how much this helps. That can be found over on Bloomberg.com.
Very, very cool. Like I said,
cool. Always the coolest.
Next week, we'll be back with these same two Hobbs and Shaw guests for F9, where we learn that Dom, spoiler, has a brother that we did not know about. So the streak of surprise siblings continues next week with F9. Also, as a preview, in September, Joe will be coming to my house. We'll be watching the Randy Carter supercut of all the movies in chronological order. And so the one that really gets diced up like this is F9. So I'm excited to see this one in theatrical order and then see it all like in chronological order. Because like we're going to see all these flashbacks.
This one's going to get rowdy. Yeah, this one gets cut a bunch. Yeah.
So
he sent us the list, guys, of like what his edits will be. And there's like, what'd you say, 30 of them? That's like, we need to move this chunk to here and like this chunk to here and like cut the. It's awesome.
And
so
when we will
the
do
outline looks
talking
crazy.
about that, and we'll talk to him about it. But one thing he did not include Hobbs and Shaw, only or largely because he doesn't know when it would take place. Like this movie is sort of outside of time and space and beyond the franchise in a way that like, is it before? Is it after? No.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear they have to explain to people what a deadly virus is, so it must take place before 2020.
Like in the 1910s.
Here's why it might be bad if this goes
in the 1200s. For all things Too Fast, Too Forever, go to cageclub.me, facebook.com/TooFast2Forever, or at TooFast2Forever on all the socials. Email us, family@cageclub.me. We'll read in a couple weeks. Check out our Patreon page at TooFast2Forever.com. We just had a bonus episode out about Patriot games, Jack Ryan. Out very soon, Airborne. Joe and I go Airborne, 1993's Airborne, on the Patreon very soon. And check out our store at cageclub.me/shop and come back next week for F9. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe too.
And that was Kim Bhasin and Walt Hickey, and we will tell you all about it
when we see you again.